I want to introduce just, someone who needs no introduction. He's already been mentioned several times today, but Walter Isaacson, president of the Aspen Institute, historian of historians, and the guy who said to me, I think we should have an arts program at the Aspen Institute. So I am proud to introduce you, Walter. You've spoken to me over these last years so many times about the road forward and the intersection of that road at arts and sciences. So it seems only right that I just literally say, take it away. This is all you.
Thank you very much, Damien. And the notion of having an arts program at the Institute, it does seem like we actually have a institute at the Damien Arts Program. You've been sort of the leader here. This is the technology. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. This is the technology section, but it's not about technology being something that you put alongside the arts, or the arts something you put alongside technology. It's not just about taking STEM and adding the arts and making it STEAM. It's about the deep and integral connection of the arts to the technologies. Ever since Leonardo did Vitruvian Man, the great people, the great universal thinkers, have never made much of a distinction between arts and technology. You saw that in Steve Jobs when he made the great product launches. He always put arts and technology, the intersection, on one of his screens. Certainly Alan Kay, who we're going to hear from, would tell you throughout his life, he never made a distinction between arts and technology. And to begin this session, which will also have Sarah Lewis, the great now Harvard professor of the arts and history and technology, we're going to begin with Megan Smith. Last September, President Obama appointed Megan as the Chief Technology Officer of the United States. That's one of the coolest titles in the world. Chief Technology Officer of the United States. And she makes sure that that's not an oxymoron these days as well. But she's also had some other pretty cool titles. She's been Vice President at Google, Vice President for Google at Google X, which was the experimental part, but also for business development. She has done everything cool at Google, from Google Earth to Google Maps to whatever. Before that, she was the chief executive of Planet Out, the first LGBT online community. And she's been a voice not only for the connection of technology to the humanities, but for inclusiveness, which is what we're hearing about all day today. So Megan, come on out. Let's talk.
So well, we started, actually before we started, I wanted you to look at the Kennedy Center logo and the Aspen Institute logo. And I'll just tell a tiny split the rock, which is we have this really cool rock that's in our office. It's 4.5 billion years old. It's the Allende meteorite. And one of the kids that was visiting, 2 kids' stories, looked at the rock. He said, "This is so cool. Why don't you split it in half and then you'll have 2?" So split the rock. The other one was my son, who said to me, "Mom, this isn't so important. Like, everything is 4.5 billion years old." And I thought, like, that is such a systems thinking, because really we come from stars. And we are there. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because Alex, who I just mentioned, is studying the Greeks. And he's making these, Parthenon things and all that. And I realized in his 4th grade stuff that they hadn't gotten to the golden ratio for some reason, which is sort of why, sort of Kennedy is modeled in a way of Lincoln and sort of the Parthenon. And you think about, why did the Greeks do those ratios? And so we were looking online for some videos, and we found this incredible video that's on the Khan Academy of Vi Hart, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. But what she does is she shows how all of our leaves and all of our pineapples and all of our pine cones and all of those things, she starts showing the spirals on them and how they're actually the Fibonacci sequence, or a form of that, right? And then you show through the Fibonacci sequence that the difference between each of those numbers, 1 + 1 and 3 and on up, is actually exactly 1.618 as it goes out, which is exactly the way that the Greeks did their 1 to 1.618. Everything that we see in nature is what the ancient Greeks were doing with what is now phi. Think of pi, 3.14, phi 1.618. And that if you can really realize that math is science, science is math, it's all the same, you know, and that art is completely related to that. Like the universe doesn't divide all the subjects the way we do at school. Like, let's go to physics class, now we're in art class, now we're in PE class, and it's all the same thing, right?
You know, when Leonardo did the Codex Leicester, he does the Fibonacci equation, and he does it to make swirls.
Right.
And there's a swirl of air that happens, and then the swirl of water.
Right.
And then you see the swirls and the ringlets and the Annunciation painting and all the things. And I remember somebody who was the curator there saying, when he was doing those swirls and doing it based on a Fibonacci equation, was he doing that as science, or was he doing it for his art?
Right.
And the guy looked at me and said, I don't think Leonardo would have made that distinction.
Exactly.
It's a phrase that Alan Kay has used often, too, so I learned it from him.
And it might be in the cadence of the poetry that we would find a pattern that's in, hello, Alan, he's my faculty advisor, one of my advisors at school.
Hey, wait, go back and talk about your connection there. That was with Marvin Minsky?
Yeah, so I was a mechanical engineering student at MIT, and I had gone to work on green energy inspired by Carter's solar panels, so it's fun to see President Obama doing solar panels. A lot of the green energy money in the 80s was drying up, and someone said, go over to the Media Lab, there's cool stuff going on. I know, and so I wandered into a lab and I met the amazing Alan Kay and Marvin Minsky and was lucky to join their team on a project sponsored by Apple. And we were working on virtual environments, and my job was make it so you could feel what you saw in the different artificial spaces. So we got to work together and it was wonderful. But my main thing of like getting you to see the images from the art and the science to the architecture and the art, and they're all the same thing. And math is the language between them, and expression and story, and all this stuff is merged. And I thought it was a nice symbol that we stare at the two, which are actually the same.
You also have a story about dance and how you used it, right?
Yeah, so one of the other things that I think is really important is, you know, something you've done so much work around, which is who we celebrate, how we celebrate, whose stories we tell. And we just have had some mistakes and a lot of both pure bias and then unconscious bias that has come. And so one of the things we were doing when I was in Silicon Valley is we were going to Hollywood and trying to get people to add the other stories. In this case, it's a science and arts piece, which is when you watch children's television and teenager television, at almost no point do the kids in sort of the pop culture, sort of Disney, ABC Family, Glee, ever do anything science and mathy, right? So the Glee kids are awesome, right? And they're such heroic, great, you know, characters to love and to learn from. And they never do science fair. And they never do like math projects and stuff, which is really a mistake because we never role model that. And we know that when we add that to TV, like CSI is such a great example, where the forensic science actresses have caused an explosion of women going into forensic science because you can't, it's hard to be what you can't see. And so the dance was interesting to me as we started because ABC Family has a terrific show called The Fosters, which is about teenagers going through struggle with their family. It's actually a two-mom family. And one of the things we tried to convince them, couldn't the kids use code in addition to theater or whatever to get out of the problem, you know, as you see them in the script. And so the season finale this year in The Fosters, the young woman is in the dance competition, like the Glee kids. She sprains her ankle. She's unable to do that, and she solves it by coding up an electronic dancer who joins. And so the kids get to see, and it's actually from a great performance group that's on Broadway right now, or off Broadway, but that does sort of lit art. And so it's code meets dance. And so they turn down the lights, and then you see the dancers in sort of a light rendition of them. And so they used that technology to do that story. But the point was that the child uses code and tech to get out of her dilemma just as much as she might use writing and theater or other arts. And so getting our children to have the fluency between all of these disciplines that are not separated is really important, and role modeling that in our storytelling across major, is really key. I was just working on the Empire team. I'm like, can't cookies get some kids out of jail who are like awesome coders, girls, and they do some great hack, and we we solve some problem using code or tech or building or whatever. Just role model.
You and I met on that regard because you were back at Google in the old days, and you were in charge of the Google Doodle for a while, or at least you got influenced.
I was influencing them. I worked really hard with them because we were rarely, I think it was maybe 10 or 20% of the doodles have been about women and just really poor representation of people of color. And I would argue with them because it celebrates birthdays, like many people don't have birthdays. And we finally got Harriet Tubman done. She doesn't have a birthday, but she's been celebrated.
By the way, we've got to get her on the $20 bill.
That would be great. Let's work on Rosie. She's over there.
A bit overrated. But go back to Ada, because that's when I think we first did it. You made a Google Doodle on Ada Lovelace.
Yeah, my colleagues did the beautiful work. I was at Silicon Valley Comes to the UK, and we were in 10 Downing Street. This is a bridging of the kind of techie entrepreneurs between the UK and the US, and so a bunch of us go over and do this work. And they were giving us a little tour, and there was this beautiful portrait, and they say, of course you know Ada Lovelace, and I'm like...
Is it 10 Downing Street?
10 Downing Street, yeah. And they're celebrating her. And I had no idea who she was. It was maybe 2010. And of course, you have really brought her to light in the first chapter of your book, and then Ada Forever, the end of your book, which I love the title of that chapter. Ada Lovelace worked with Charles Babbage, and she was the first, really known as the first programmer in the world, the first person to think of programmability and write the first algorithms and see the pattern of that. And she did that, and so we learned about her. We waited a year to do the doodle because the birthday was on a Saturday that year in New Seymour. And it was so exciting that if you see the doodle, she's sitting writing, and it was in writing that she expressed this. She's sitting in the doodle writing, and the writing goes all through the letters all the way to iTunes, like things, because she wrote about the programmability of many things, including music, that could be algorithmically represented. And so what I love is that doodle was seen by probably about 100 million people, and we were in the top 20 rising on Twitter for a good 10 to 15 hours worldwide, which is how do you take someone from the Victorian era who's such an important figure for us, and in her existence the future changes because young people know that women and men do this work and always have, and always has been extraordinary, even if someone didn't write their history, and we need to stand it back up as you did. It's so critical.
And Lord Byron's daughter, she had both the poetic sensibility and the science.
Which merges our stuff.
Yeah, that made it work.
That made it work, which is so incredible.
When David Rubenstein was talking about, I think Apollo 8, was it? And in some ways, that's another set of women scientists, or women scientists in particular, written out of history.
Right. So I call it like, there's sort of these things that we keep doing by accident. We keep doing whether it's the Bechdel Test. Do you guys know the Bechdel Test?
No, but you can explain it.
Okay. Yeah. Bechdel Test is...
we didn't do Fibonacci's equation for them.
So yeah, we could. So Bechdel Test is something we've actually been accidentally doing this morning. If you see a film, we didn't mean to, but it's in our unconscious bias. We do it naturally, and we need to get out of it. Bechdel Test is if you watch a film, the film has two women characters, major, minor, but there's two characters in. They have a conversation with each other during the film, and it's not about a man. Most films can't pass that. And today, many of our speakers didn't realize, but they spoke of men and their wives. And they didn't ever lift up in their 3 or 4 examples. You just have to make yourself do it. You have to make yourself put a woman, person of color, and not just Smurf it, maybe 2 or 3. Smurf it means, have you ever seen the movie Smurfs? Yes, there's only one woman in the Smurf world. It's like the movie Nemo. You ever seen the movie Nemo? How many women in the ocean, in the whole ocean, in Nemo? I don't think that's biologically possible. So there's this incredible woman. There's 3 women I'll tell you about from Apollo. One I don't know as well, who is in sort of the core coding team, but the 2 that I know more about, Katherine Johnson, is an extraordinary African-American woman. She's in her 90s. She lives in Maryland. She was a computer. Many people were called computers before computers. They computed, like lawyers and accountants. Many women were computers. A lot of people in the war effort. You told the story of the Enika women. Our first digital programmers in America are 6 women who were computers who coded the first algorithms and sort routines, a nearly lost history story in World War II. But okay, so Katherine was an extraordinary mathematician. She graduated at 14 from high school and then 18 from college, took every math class, waited 7 years to find a job, but eventually joined Langley as a low-level computer. And when Sputnik went, she asked to join the briefing. And they said, well, women don't go to that. And she said, well, is there a law? And they said, no, you can go. She's the American who calculated the trajectories for Alan Shepard, John Glenn, who would not fly unless Katherine checked the math because they had added more computers, and the Apollo missions. And I didn't see her in the Apollo movie. Did you? No. Yeah, she's not there. But we need her there. The other person is this fabulous woman, Margaret Hamilton. There's Margaret Hamilton, the actress from The Wizard of Oz, of course. But there's this picture on Wikipedia. Whoops, I'm losing my mic. Sorry. There's a picture on Wikipedia, and it's so cool. There's Margaret. And she's standing next to her code, and it's taller than her. And she wrote this code. She's credited with inventing the idea of asynchronous software engineering. And she managed the lunar landers code. So one of the great things that nobody knocks about the lunar lander, apparently one of the inventions she made was this idea to override. And so during the landing on the moon, all eyes on it, turns out there were a couple switches that were misflipped. And so they were getting the signal to abort the mission, abort the mission, abort the mission. But her code said, please ignore everything because we have limited resources in these tech things, and only follow the landing sequence. Had she not written that, they would have aborted the mission. That's a big deal. It could have been in the movie, right? Yeah. So like we just lose our history, and it's completely debilitating to everybody. So we need to just fix that, because our young men and women need to know they've always been part. People of color need to know they've always been part at elite levels, and I really applaud all the work you've been doing, mostly inspired by your daughter Betsy, who brought not only your amazing ability to see history and how its relevance is universal and forever, but also Betsy's insight to bring Ada forward.
Well, one of the things was when she saw Ada in the Doodle and started studying Ada, and she wrote a little essay about it to try to get into college. I said, why'd you do that? And she said, well, I love computers, and up until I learned about Ada, I didn't realize that girls could code or be computers. In fact, the only role model I had was a woman named Oracle in the Batman comics. There was nobody in history I had learned about.
Right, yeah, all of our superhero stuff gets smurfed too. Mm-hmm. There's always like the group with the one girl. It's a sad thing, but the kids, they see that and they watch for that, and it matters a lot. Gina Davis, of course, has done extraordinary work on representation and really actually counting. And out of every 4 characters in kids' TV, only one's a girl, and out of every 5 character in family and kids' TV, only of STEM characters, only one's a girl. And in computer science, what your daughter was watching, out of 15 characters cast or drawn, animated for children and family, only one's a girl. And it's worse for people of color. So you just watch as she was watching this all day, and she's like, oh, I don't do this. The boys do this.
There's an amazing set of statistics I stumbled across, one of which is that more women got PhDs in math in the 1930s than a generation later, both in proportion and in absolute number.
Yeah.
Secondly, when I went to college and doing computer science, 37% of the people majoring in computer science were women. Last year it was 17%. We went in the wrong direction.
Right.
What can we do?
I think there's so many things we can do. One of the things that the research shows us that being able to see that people do the stuff matters. Understanding its impact and adapting how we teach and how we speak. 70% of high school computer science teachers think the boys are better than the girls, despite all the evidence that shows that's untrue. So they just kind of gravitate in that way. So how do we push ourselves now, not just wait, and get people in? The Harvey Mudd team has done an extraordinary job with computer science education at the university level, where they really just talk about why are we doing this, and then they dive into the algorithm. They split the class. Many people can arrive at college because of access to tools, having coded for 5 to 10 years already. And so they have, their school colors are black and gold, so the black track is, color track is for the elite programmers, gold oldest for the new programmers, and so you don't have to walk in a class and be intimidated by somebody who's years ahead of you. Just getting really smart about how we pull people in and doing like customer design research. Why are you not in this class, and how do I pull you in? And that's what that faculty did. And then at the grown-up level, across the board with workforce and leadership and entrepreneurship, just really getting it done about lifting the prioritization of diversity and inclusion, lifting the prioritization. We have amazing, extraordinary corporate leaders and other leaders. Their eyes are not on this problem. It's on the problem list of 20. It's not on the problem list of 3 to 5. And we need to upgrade that because it's such a waste of talent. It's a waste of talent for them. All of the studies show that the more diverse the team, the more exceptional the product. The more diverse the team, the more financial performance you have. So from a shareholder value perspective, it's one of your most important things to do. And so getting people, and it's hard stuff. So some of it's easy, and we should just do it, and let's get that low-hanging fruit. But some of it's complicated, because unconscious bias is a real thing. You know, we have to debug that and prioritize and get it done, and stop the death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Now, tell me one simple question. What does the Chief Technology Officer of the United States do?
What do we do? Yeah, so the president created this job on his first day, and we're embedded in the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy with the President's Science Advisor. We talked about the moon. Jerry Wiesner was Kennedy's science advisor. So long history there in the country, and also back to Washington and these guys. Washington started the Army Corps of Engineers before the founding of the country. Mm-hmm. So we've always had this science and tech. We're embedded there with our colleagues as sort of instigators. We do a lot of tech policy work, things like you saw our work together with colleagues on net neutrality and broadband access, patent reform, and having the techies really at the table when we're talking about encryption with all our other colleagues, so that we really have the strongest of our tech Americans together with the economists and the lawyers and the others. So that's a key part of our work. And the second part is really instigating. And for example, digital government, it's one of the things we're working on. We're the country that makes Amazon and Facebook and Twitter, and why don't our websites and all of the digital work of our government work at that elite level? It's because we haven't had those Americans in. It doesn't mean the government should build things we should do through contract, but we should have those Americans in, and that's what the president learned in healthcare.gov. He realized he had all this great policy, economics, partnership. Like when you see what now the website's fixed, that 16 million Americans have health care, what a breathtaking thing he's done. And yet the tanking of that website caused him to see that a set of Americans were missing. And so now he's bringing us. And so I call it TQ, like IQ and EQ, TQ to government. And so we're seeing like the tech, like IQ, EQ. The number 3 employee of Amazon just joined the VA. Like, what's the second act after you make Amazon? American veterans, right? That's an extraordinary thing to have the honor to work on. And so we're seeing our tech colleagues really coming with hundreds of people we've already recruited who have built Facebook and Google and Twitter and these things, and they're coming, and they're going to rotate just like our judicial folks, legal folks rotate to clerk, and our economists rotate in, and our scientists do AAAS fellows, and our medical folks do the CDC and NIH, and all our humanities rock stars come in and out. The techies have been relegated to contracting. We're going to fix that and come and be part. And then the last thing that we're really instigating right now is exactly what you're talking about today. How do we get more of the Americans in on this innovation, passion work, what they care about solving, and bringing their passion to solving these problems, and not sitting in divided places where one group is doing the science fair in SpaceX and the other group is not? And why shouldn't we have high expectations for all Americans, merge our subjects, get the scientists and the techies and the humanities rock stars working together, and have all Americans in on that? I call it Innovation Nation. Right. We want all Americans in on Innovation Nation. And
that theme of an Innovation Nation, innovation comes when you connect the arts to technology. And as our segue to your old mentor, Alan Kay, I want to ask you, you talked a little bit about the role of the arts, like having TV shows have techies in it, but in a deeper level, how do you see the connection of the arts and technology?
Yeah, everything is in, it's sort of that design thinking. And the inspiration comes from wherever you are. We talked a little bit about the Macintosh team. And Susan Kerr, who did all the beautiful graphical, Joanna Hoffman, project managing them, and the coders, and everybody working together, and Alan, the work at Xerox PARC. it's sort of the art comes through. It's that same thing of inspiration, whether it's a more techy direction you go and through invention and iteration, or whether you're painting and you make another version, or whether you're writing a manuscript and you're iterating. You come up with a basic idea and then you start advancing it, sometimes in teams and sometimes alone, and it doesn't matter which track you're on. It's the form of creation and making and doing and participating, sometimes in team and sometimes alone. And I think that the more we think of things as divided, the more we limit what's possible. And especially our young people, making sure that, if they want to make something, it might be a code, it might be with painting, it might be with voice, it might be with language. It doesn't really matter what tool you grab, but have all the tools available and be proficient in using them from pre-K. Head Start should have numeracy and making as much as it has reading, in story time, and put that together and do that as a practice. And then the thing that's so exciting right now is our invention of the internet as humanity is, sometimes there's this thing called the Clue Train Manifesto, and these guys who wrote that, it was early on, wrote a thing called the New Clues, and I encourage you to look for it, the New Clues. It's a list of ideas. And the first one is, the internet's not like wires and stuff, it's just us. It's just us connected.
That's right.
And my favorite is number 12, which is, there hasn't been as profound a human invention since language.
And it's because it connects us, which is exactly what art is supposed to do,
right,
is to connect us emotionally. To end with Ada Lovelace, what you've just said reminded me that she could understand the absolute beauty of a line of her father's poetry, even a complicated line, like she walks in beauty like the night.
Right.
And Ada could conceive of it. But she could also see the beauty in a line of an algorithm, or something that would program Bernoulli numbers, or mathematical equation. She knew it too was just a good Lord's brushstroke for painting something beautiful in reality. And so that was the deep connection between the arts and technology that I think she helped inspire us to do.
Yeah, very much so. And my son Alex, who connected these for me, said to me after he watched a couple of these amazing videos that were so well done, "Why doesn't everyone know this, Mom?" And I said, "I think you're right, let's go."